new team colors, and a bright new star. Title favorite Ayrton Senna rushed into the lead in his new Williams Renault. But behind Senna, there loomed a challenger. Michael Schumacher passed Jean Alesi's Ferrari into second place and then set out after the leader, drawing ever closer. When Senna pitted for tires and fuel, he held the lead. But when the three-time world champion pulled back into the pit lane, he was beaten to the exit by Schumacher, and the race had changed hands. On the track, Schumacher's teammate Jos Verstappen ran afoul of a traffic jam and ended his Grand Prix debut with a terrifying barrel roll that wiped out 4 cars, but miraculously left the quartet of drivers unhurt. Up front, Senna's mighty effort to overhaul Schumacher overpowered his car's traction, and in that moment, the race was over. With Senna gone, Schumacher was free to romp to the checkered flag, the third of his Formula One career. A victory that pushed the ecstatic German into his first ever points lead toward the most coveted prize in motorsports. But that was merely round 1. Round 2 begins today. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. The second race of 16 on the 1994 Formula One season is the Grand Prix of the Pacific at a brand new circuit, Tanaka International in racing crazy Japan. The Tanaka circuit lies in a remote part of southern Japan near the town of Aida, 500 miles south of Tokyo. More on the track later on. The story of the season thus far is Michael Schumacher. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha. This was the scene in Brazil as Michael Schumacher celebrated his season-opening victory, just the latest chapter in an incredible rise to the top. It began 3 seasons ago when Schumacher stunned everyone by qualifying 4th at the Belgian Grand Prix in his debut. He dropped out of that race, but a year later he returned to Belgium, driving for the Benetton team, and claimed his first Grand Prix victory in a straight fight with eventual world champion Nigel Mansell. A year later, Schumacher won again, this time in Portugal, a victory eclipsed by Alain Prost's 4th world title. But by then, Schumacher had earned legions of fans for his unbridled enthusiasm on the podium. He and the Benetton team are on a roll. Here with an explanation is Derek Daly.
Benetton team manager Flavio Briatore was one of those opposed to some of the 94 regulation changes. One of those changes brought back refueling, which in Brazil was incident-free. It also changed the face of the race because that's where Schumacher passed Senna for the lead. Without active suspension, ride heights are not as well controlled anymore. Therefore, once again, the sparks fly. Last season, traction control was a security blanket for wheel spin, and now it's gone. Cars are now more of a handful, raising the physical effort and in some cases causing blisters. So is there more parity between teams? Yes, at the moment. History has shown that racing success goes in cycles. Maybe Williams and McLaren will have to weather a trough. Everything in a racing car is a compromise. It's how you package those compromises that determines your success. And every dog has his day in the sunshine. Senna has had many. Perhaps the wonder-kind Schumacher is about to have plenty.
No question about it. After one race, the combination of Michael Schumacher and the Benetton Ford V8 is the one to beat. This is the Formula One Grand Prix of the Pacific. This ESPN Speed World presentation is brought to you by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. By Volvo. Volvo would like you to drive safely. And by your local Yamaha dealer, who invites you to see his exciting line of motorcycles, ATVs, and snowmobiles. Welcome back to the Pacific Grand Prix. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly with you. The field is rolling off. Let's take a look at our Yamaha starting grid. The front row, the same as it was at Brazil. Ayrton Senna of Brazil in the Williams Renault next to Michael Schumacher of Germany in the Benetton Ford V8. Row 2, Damon Hill of Great Britain in the second Williams Renault next to Mika Hakkinen in the spare McLaren Peugeot. Row 3, Gerhard Berger of Austria in his Ferrari next to Martin Brundle of Great Britain in the second McLaren. Row 4, Nicola Larini of Italy in the Ferrari sitting in for Jean Alesi, who broke 3 bones in his neck in a big crash 3 weeks ago in practice. Next to him, Rubens Barrichello of Brazil in the Jordan Hart V10. Row 5, Christian Fittipaldi of Brazil in the Footwork Ford V8 next to the Benetton Ford of Dutchman Jos Verstappen. Row 6, Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Germany in the Sauber Mercedes V10, next to the Tyrrell Yamaha V10 of Mark Blundell of Great Britain. Row 7 will be Gianni Morbidelli of Italy in the Footwork Ford, next to Ukio Katayama of Japan, a big crowd favorite in the Tyrrell Yamaha. Row 8, Michele Alboreto of Italy in the Minardi, next to Eric Comas of France in the Larousse Ford. Row 9, Pierluigi Martini of Italy in the second Minardi, next to the Ligier of Frenchman Eric Bernard. Row 10, Karl Wendlinger of Austria in the Sauber Mercedes, and Aguri Suzuki sitting in for Eddie Irvine in the Jordan Hart. Row 11, Olivier Beretta of Monaco in the Larousse, next to the Ligier of Olivier Penny of France. Row 12, Johnny Herbert of Great Britain, next to his Lotus teammate Pedro Lamy of Portugal. And the 13th and final row, David Brabham of Australia, next to his Simtek Ford teammate Roland Ratzenberger of Austria in his very first Grand Prix start. The cars that failed to qualify, Bertrand Gachot and Paul Belmondo in the Pacific Ilmor machines. Our race conditions as we get set for the green light, a temperature of 72 degrees, partly cloudy skies, a little bit breezy, but no chance of rain in the forecast. Here's a look at the driver standings coming into this event. After one race, they're pretty easy to figure out. 10 points for race winner Michael Schumacher, followed by Damon Hill, John Alesi, Barrichello, Katayama, and Wendlinger. Derek Daly, let's take a look at this brand new TI circuit.
Well, this is tight, twisty, narrow. It's a bit like Monaco without the houses. And rhythm is the buzzword here, because if you mess up one corner, it can take you 3 or 4 to recover. Speeds range between 40 miles an hour to 190 on a very low grip track. It's difficult to pass fast cars here as well as slow cars.
It is 2.3 miles around with some interesting corner names. We'll get to that in a moment. The field is now in place. We await the green flag and then the green light. We have yellow flags at the back. One of the drivers waving his arms, but we get the green light and the race is underway. Senna, the pole man, gets a terrible start. Schumacher takes the lead, and Senna spins.
Oh, Senna was hit by, and the Ferrari is in there. Hakkinen hits Senna, he spins, and Larini gets collected, and Mark Blundell and the Tyrrell is involved.
And he has spun and apparently stalled square in the middle of the racetrack. The white number 4 is Mark Blundell. There goes the safety car. And there is Olivier Penny in the Ligier. He apparently was the reason for the yellow flags at the start. On the map at the upper right, you see where the accident took place, the very first corner of the race.
2 races in a row, Ayrton Senna will not score any points, but Schumacher, you can see clearly in the lead, and Mika Hakkinen does not look as if he has any damage to the front wings of that car.
Ayrton Senna climbs out. What a moment. The Brazilian with no points after 2 races. As you look down from high overhead. Now here's a replay of that start. You see the arms waving from Penny in the back. Senna gets lots of wheel spin. Schumacher moves to the front.
Now watch Mika Hakkinen. Bang! Straight into the back of Senna, spins him around. Now Senna is okay if the engine's running until Larini in the Ferrari arrives. And we also know that Blundell, somehow, we'll see it from an overhead here. You see Senna, too much wheel spin. Schumacher clear lead. Here's the attack by Hakkinen, spins him. Now the concertina effect all the way back, and that's what tangles up Mark Blundell. Larini simply had nowhere to go there.
There is Frank Williams, who has just watched the biggest investment he has ever made, some $20 million a year in that man, go up in smoke for the second straight race. Senna walks back dejectedly across the racetrack. We'll be back with more of the Grand Prix of the Pacific in a moment. Welcome back to the Grand Prix of the Pacific. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly with you. There is 3-time world champion Ayrton Senna. This race got underway in dramatic fashion as he was punted off the racetrack by Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren Peugeot, and then T-boned by Nicola Larini in the Ferrari. And former world champion Ayrton Senna is out of his second straight race in 1994. Your race leader is Michael Schumacher right there in the Benetton Ford Zetec R V8.
Of course, that Zetec RV8 won its very first race in Brazil. You'll notice on the car, the double rear wing. These cars this weekend have used every pound of downforce they could generate to try and get some grip on this, what they term as a very low grip surface.
An interesting history to this racetrack. It was built by wealthy Japanese businessman Hajime Tanaka a developer of golf courses and a wealthy watch collector. It's been built basically as a country club for his equally wealthy fellow car enthusiasts. For about $150,000, you can join this racetrack, park your car out here, rent the racetrack, drive it around as fast as you like. But one of the stipulations in selling memberships to this track was that Tanaka promised them a Formula One Grand Prix, and now he has it. Now here comes race leader Schumacher. You saw one of the LaRousse cars go out the bottom of your screen, so Michael Schumacher is about to lap someone in the opening laps of this circuit.
That's Hakkinen and Damon Hill. Berger in the Ferrari, all the way back to Barrichello and Martin Brundle having a good start, good first lap.
Then Christian Fittipaldi and young Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber.
You'll notice on the Benetton, you'll see it right there, Schumacher's car this weekend carries the orange fluorescent markings on the front wing and just below the nose to try and help not just television, but to try and help the team even differentiate between these cars.
You're riding on board with Gerhard Berger now with another look at the drama at the start. Watch the right side of your screen. There's Ayrton Senna going around.
And Berger able to skim down the inside, sees all the action. Oh, Damon Hill is off.
Damon Hill is off the racetrack, but he kept the fire and he gets back on. He'll have dirt all over his tires and he'll lose probably a half dozen places.
He had been trying to pass Mika Hakkinen obviously got too close down the inside, lots and lots of dirt, and causes a traffic jam. Verstappen and Fittipaldi are in it.
The black car is the Sauber Mercedes V10 of Heinz-Harald Frentzen, then Jos Verstappen, who did that incredible barrel roll in that huge crash in Brazil, then Damon Hill right there in the blue and white car.
The Williams also has that double rear wing. See there? The rear wing that was pioneered by the footwork car, now the Arrows car. It's amazing how even some of the small teams come up with aerodynamic developments and all the big teams follow suit. Senna and Larini dejected. It's a long walk down the pit lane. But Frank's face will not change when he gets the explanation because he is totally emotionless in these racing conditions.
I think Michael Schumacher might have to bear some of the blame for that crash. He came across Senna's bow. Senna got on the brakes. Whoa, and Damon Hill trying to get under Jos Verstappen. No luck.
Damon Hill needs some patience here. He needs some patience. There's plenty of time here. He is in one of the fastest cars. Oh, he's off the road. The dust is kicked up. But Senna and Damon Hill were first and second fastest in the morning warm-up, where someone like Schumacher and Verstappen used very few laps in the warm-up because, believe it or not, they want to save the tires. Can you believe it? Saving the tires is now one of the key issues of F1. They're only allowed 7 sets to try and reduce the cost. The thing about it is, now they don't want to run because they're so valuable.
Damon Hill runs in 9th place. Now the tires being used for this race, 2 cars started out on the medium-hard Goodyear compound. Those are Martin Brundle and his McLaren, and Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan Hart. Everybody else is on the softer C compound tires, obviously looking for traction over tire wear. And they don't particularly need tire wear because we expect 2 stops for new rubber and fuel.
Well, here he comes again. Here he comes. Here he comes. He makes it. He makes it. He makes it.
8th place for Hill. Let's see if Verstappen can come back. No, he will not. Now they're pulling in behind the pit area here. This track, like many new circuits around the world, kind of folds in on itself.
The names are great. This is the Redmond corner. Back with Schumacher. The names of these corners are very interesting. We can follow them later on. Called after people like Sterling Moss, David Piper, David Hobbs, and Mike Knight. We'll get back to Mike Knight later. Here's the pass. Under braking, down the inside. Verstappen leaves him plenty of room, realizes the corner is already gone, and Damon Hill is safely through to 8th place. Frank doesn't even break a smile.
Speeds of up to 190 miles an hour or more are reached around this very, very tight racetrack. Ayrton Senna's average speed for the pole, 117 miles an hour. A new race at this track, obviously a new track record. Michael Schumacher leads. We'll be right back. Back at the Tanaka International Circuit in Aida, Japan in the Grand Prix of the Pacific, there is Damon Hill, who started this race in third place, but got squeezed off the racetrack and dropped back to ninth. He has now passed his way into eighth. There is the race leader, Michael Schumacher of Germany.
That's the Stirling Moss curves he just came through. Heavy braking. This corner is a bit like the old end of the boot at Watkins Glen. Down the dip, turn right, up the hill again. But Schumacher way out in the lead. Definitely well in control at the moment.
Here's a look at your top six. Schumacher, Hakkinen, Berger, Barrichello, Brundle, and Fittipaldi. Still in the very early going. 83 laps of this 2.3-mile circuit for this Grand Prix of the Pacific, to be distinguished, of course, from the Japanese Grand Prix, which will be held in October at Suzuka, Japan. You're riding on board with Schumacher.
And this is Redmond corner, second gear. This is Hobbs, still second gear. Now the blast. Mike Knight corner, 125 miles an hour. Last corner before the pit straight, 110 miles an hour.
Mike Knight happens to be the name of the PR representative for the Newman Haas IndyCar team. That is not the Mike Knight for whom that corner is named, but rather for the founder of the famous Elf Winfield Driving School in France. There's Martin Brundle in the red and white McLaren with that V10 Peugeot engine that so much is expected of in this 1994 season.
Brundle said he was groggy for almost a week after that huge incident in Brazil. Look at the Benetton boys already dressed in case Schumacher needs to stop or Verstappen.
Head-to-toe fire suits for these team members at a cost of some $350 per man. So the effort to bring refueling back to Formula One is certainly not without its extraneous costs. Schumacher just continues to drive away from this field.
Again, this is all the slow speed stuff. Second gear mainly. Quick blast, you can hear it. Oh, almost locks the brake there, right front. There's the blast. And now the front straight. Two places they reach speeds above 185 miles an hour. At the end of the straight here and on the back straight. He enjoys going through turn one because the next one is called Williams. But here's the battle here. No, it's not a battle. It's a lap traffic. One of the LaRousse cars carrying Kronenberg, which is the beer obviously owned by the same company as makes Turtel, which is the non-alcoholic beer whose sponsorship that car carries. That's Mika Hakkinen. Not showing any bad signs, although if you look very closely, you can see the black tire marks on the nose cone of Hakkinen's car where he punted and drop-kicked Ayrton Senna on that first corner.
That's Eric Komos in that LaRousse machine with the red and white paint job. Hakkinen slides under him at the end of the straightaway, pulls a tear-off his visor, which might inconveniently wind up in one of the side pods of the LaRousse machine behind him, and overheating might then become a problem.
You saw a good run there between the Ford V8 in the LaRousse car and the new Peugeot V10 in the McLaren. There wasn't much in... Oh, there's some smoke from Hakkinen. He is in trouble. But there wasn't much of a power difference between that Peugeot and that Ford. Hakkinen had to get on the brakes very late to try and make it, but he is showing signs of trouble. I don't see it now, but that was either fluid or smoke or both coming out of Hakkinen's car.
No question about it. A puff of smoke from Mika Hakkinen's machine, and you can see that black mark on the nose where he got underneath Ayrton Senna in the very first corner of this race. Hakkinen's speed seems to be unabated, however.
There's good progress with this Peugeot V10 engine. However, it runs very hot. Martin Brundle also, the engine has a tendency to run hot. That's what put Hakkinen out in Brazil. But Damon Hill is flying at the moment. He is the man catching everybody and making the moves.
The Peugeot team powering the McLarens. barely got started on their Formula One program until July of last year. They had engines running on the dynamometers in December, and they have both 4 and 5 valve versions of this engine available. Here comes Damon Hill down the inside of Martin Brundle.
There's the two V10s and a head-to-head. Damon Hill's favorite position, under braking, turns right, gets down the inside. He is now in 5th place, chasing Barrichello, who holds that 4th, and he is not far behind him.
Once again, this is behind the pit complex. Sharp left-hander coming up.
You just got a glimpse there. That is Fittipaldi in the Arrows car, another car with a Ford V8. There he is on the top of the picture. So he also is having a good day. In fact, Fittipaldi has been on the pace here all weekend. Here it is again, replay. Hill down the inside under heavy braking. Brundle, no contest, moves aside early in the race to go wheel to wheel in a banging session. So he's happy enough to let him go.
Now Damon Hill begins to close in on the Jordan V10 Hart-powered machine of Rubens Barrichello.
Tries to make another he has it. Squeeze down the inside. Bit of a muscle man move there. Got inside, pushed the point. Barrichello backed off. Barrichello starting 8th equals his best ever qualifying, the same as he started in the French Grand Prix, I believe it was last year.
So Damon Hill moves up into 4th place. No doubt about it, he shouldered his way by Barrichello. There goes Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari out the bottom of your screen. Here's a look at the running order with 12 laps complete. But the story has been Damon Hill, who spun his way back to 9th place, but has come marching back through this field. Now they're showing him as 5th, but we've just seen him pass Rubens Barrichello. He's really in 4th.
Extensive testing went on at Jerez in Spain right after Brazil because it was such a disaster. They came up with new aerodynamic deflectors on the front of these cars to try and make it more competitive compared to the Benetton.
David Brabham is also out of the race. We'll be back to Japan in a moment. You're riding on board with race leader Michael Schumacher at the Grand Prix of the Pacific. From the Tanaka International Circuit in Aida, Japan, Bob Varsha and Derek Daly, glad to have you with us. Heading into the S corners, the Moss S's.
And you could hear there it was flat all the way through the S as he fights the wheel trying to control this car. Benetton has an exclusive on this new Z-Tech V8 engine from Ford for this season. But at the rate it's going, they will have a queue of people at the door looking to use that next year.
There's a quick look at Olivier Beretta driving the Ligier in the midst of battle. There goes Pedro Lamy and Johnny Herbert in the two Lotus machines. They've been having just a terrible time this weekend. They're using an updated version of last year's car, and it simply will not put the power to the ground. This is the battle for 5th place now. Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan Hart, and just behind him, Martin Brundle in the McLaren Peugeot. Oh, and they get right down to the edge of the track, and then Barrichello in the Jordan takes Brundle right out to the edge.
And look what he did. Brundle was about to make his strongest attack so far, and Barrichello knew exactly what he was going to do. He moved down to the middle of the track and then down to the tight line, so Brundle was going to have to go around the outside if he was to pull it off. But Barrichello holds him off. This is where the battle is, and Christian Fittipaldi in the Arrows car now makes it a threesome.
Barrichello has a new teammate this weekend, Aguri Suzuki of Japan, who picked up some points back in 1990 in the Japanese Grand Prix. Eddie Irvine, who started the year with the team, was involved in that big crash in Brazil 3 weeks ago. He was fined $10,000 and suspended for this race on the spot. The team appealed that decision. The fine was lifted, but they added 2 races to the suspension. Kelly Alboreto made light of it this weekend. He said Eddie Irvine has set a record. He's been banned from more races than he's competed in. But all in all, Derek, I'd have to say that was a very heavy penalty for what seemed like, to me at least, a racing accident.
I don't think it was right at all. I think it was a disgrace that they charged him so heavily in something that he did not trigger, because we now know that Martin Brundle's problem with the Peugeot engine triggered the whole problem when the flywheel came off. That's what caused the Ligier to jump on the brakes, and Eddie Irvine had to take avoiding action. So very, very unjust.
This is the battle for third place. Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. His teammate Nicola Larini is now out of the race. Damon Hill looking for another spot to take back. You saw a car moving slowly at the back of your screen a moment ago. That was one of the LaRousse cars. That was Olivier Beretta. I mentioned Beretta before is driving the Ligier. Actually, that was Pani in the Ligier. Beretta is in the LaRousse. We now have 5 cars out of the race. Senna, Blundell, and Larini in that start crash. David Brabham is out of the race in his Simtek Ford with engine failure. And Olivier Beretta is now out in the LaRousse. There he is.
That's it. End of the day for the Cronenberg car. Will be back painted in the normal green colors before when they get back to Europe. But look at Damon Hill all over the back of the Ferrari. Much midnight oil being burned in the Ferrari team at the moment, trying to make this car handle better. Hill down the outside, doesn't pull it off. Doesn't pull it off. Wheel to wheel. Still tries. Doesn't make it. Doesn't make it. But the Ferrari they're trying to get more downforce from this car. It does not have enough downforce, therefore does not generate enough grip. You can see lots of in-car cameras, one on each side of the rear wing and one behind the driver's head on Berger's Ferrari. One of the things they tried is the aerodynamics on this car is very much modular. They can take sections away and add new ones, but to get more rigidity in the underfloor, they've actually got a full one-piece underfloor now. They're trying everything they can do on the road, but they really need to get back to Italy, they say, to actually develop the aerodynamics more.
Up to 185, 186 miles an hour before they get hard on the brakes, down to 40 miles an hour for the first corner. 12 turns around this 2.3-mile road course. Michael Schumacher leads. We'll be right back. Tonight here on ESPN, that other favorite Japanese sport, baseball on ESPN. The Baltimore Orioles visit the Texas Rangers at the brand new ballpark in Arlington, Texas. The Orioles and the Rangers at 8 p.m. live here on ESPN. Back at the Tanaka International Circuit, Mika Hakkinen pits his McLaren.
And you can see in the pit lane, he gets the wheels broken away at the rear. Wheel spins, black marks. Oh, he stalls it.
He's asking them to get him up on the jacks and restart the engine. The fuel hose is removed. Battery plugged in. Look at that enormous rear wing. And here's Damon Hill pitting his Williams. Hakkinen back out. Oh, so dangerous in a Formula One pit lane with all of those crew members standing around. And look at the speed of Damon Hill as he leaves the pit exit.
They must be doing 140 miles an hour before they ever even exit the pit lane onto the racetrack. But nobody has been hurt in Formula One pit lanes, so they must be aware of what's going on. Maybe the noise of the cars alone makes you aware that there's something dangerous going on, and be careful.
Not for a decade, at least. There have been problems over the years, but it's been a long time, thankfully.
And look how much time Hakkinen lost, all the way back now to Damon Hill, who's obviously in catch-up mode following that earlier spin. In fact, trying to pass Mika Hakkinen. So here we go again. Maybe it's going to happen again.
Hakkinen is 9th. Hill is 10th following that pit stop. Just ahead of them, Gianni Morbidelli in the arrows, but another big puff of smoke from the back of the McLaren.
Hakkinen will be in trouble. These engines are prone to running very, very hot, and the hotter you run, you eventually cook yourself. That looks to be what's happening to Mika Hakkinen.
I mentioned that this Peugeot engine program has not been in existence for a year yet. There's only about 30 of these engines built thus far in both the 4 and 5 valve configurations, so it's very much a program in development. It's being run by Jean-Pierre Jabouille, who rose to fame as a Formula One driver, introducing the turbos with the Renault team. Damon Hill goes around the McLaren, and Mika Hakkinen is slowing down.
Yeah. Damon Hill got by way too quickly. Hakkinen is in trouble. There's no doubt he is in trouble. You mentioned the 4 and the 5 valve engines. they have brought only the 4-valve this weekend. They say the 5-valve is potentially better, but it's not better at the moment, because they don't know how to fully develop it. But that is the future of the Peugeot V10 engine, using 5 valves per cylinder, 3 intake and 2 exhaust.
And that graphic just put up by our friends from the FIA World Feed is incorrect. Mika Hakkinen is now 10th. There's Michael Schumacher. You can rest assured he is the race leader. Now here is a fully developed engine from Cosworth Engineering, and the dynamics of this V8 are just extraordinary. Revving to 14,500 RPM, 120 spark plug explosions in a single cylinder in 1 second, almost 1,000 controlled explosions in all 8 cylinders every tick of the clock.
And all the drivers do is abuse them as much as possible. If you miss a gear, if you over-rev it, you just hope that the thing lives.
And Hakkinen is in the pits once again, so more problems for Mika Hakkinen and his McLaren Peugeot. And it's in the garage. Hakkinen is done.
That's it. 2 races in a row, 2 failures. Now, Peugeot expect a lot of this. You have to, in fairness, expect a steep learning curve for a new manufacturer like Peugeot to come in. We're not exactly sure what it is, but word from the pit says it in fact is a hydraulic fluid loss and a hydraulic pressure loss to the gearbox that began to cause most of his problems. Berger, Barrichello, and Martin Brundle.
2nd, 3rd, and 4th on the racetrack. So far, Nicola Larini is out for Ferrari, but Gerhard Berger appears to be going well. Ferrari still working on their longest losing streak ever, approaching 55 races without a victory. Stay with us. The Grand Prix of the Pacific in Aida, Japan. Race leader Michael Schumacher is in the pits in his Benetton, and he almost clipped the pit wall coming in.
And again gets a sideways under power with wheel spin. If you had time to count how many people, they have as many as 21 people work on these cars. A good stop for Schumacher. He never lost the lead. Berger, who was 2nd, did not have enough time to catch and pass him.
There's Mika Hakkinen talking to the assembled press and McLaren team members about what happened. Hydraulic problems that operate the gearbox and the clutch in that McLaren Peugeot, we are told, is the reason for his retirement.
See the air deflector still used by the Benetton in the front of the side pods? That's what was protested by Jordan at the Brazilian Grand Prix. They've since changed it. They now have a shadow plate, or a floor, if you like, underneath those side deflectors to technically make them legal. And a brief look at Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, running in 2nd position. Berger has not yet pitted. We expect 2, perhaps as many as 3 pit stops during the course of this race as the weather continues to warm in Japan. There's the gap from the leader Schumacher in number 5 to Berger in number 28. Schumacher on Saturday in the qualifying session did 1 exploratory lap, 1 slow lap, and stopped. He said, I want to save my tires for race day. Now he's using them to maximum benefit. Fresh tires on a very slippery surface, looking for that elusive grip. There's a look from high overhead. You'll notice that this racetrack is set in a mountainous region. We are literally hundreds of miles from anywhere in Japan, and that has caused an enormous logistical operation to get these people in and out. There are about 60,000 fans on hand. Promoters actually took down some grandstands that were here when it became clear that they would not sell out. The reason? This track is so far removed from anywhere that no one is allowed to drive their car in here. There is one road going in and out, and a fleet of 1,500 buses has been commissioned to bring the crowd in and out, and it is a very expensive operation. You say 1,500. Originally, they had booked 2,000 buses, every bus within a 250-mile radius. You know how long 2,000 buses stretch? It's 16 miles in a straight line of parking. Look at Barrichello, and Brundle drives all over the curves on the inside, trying to force the pass on Barrichello, and he still didn't pull it off. They are wheel to wheel, nose to tail for almost the whole race, and this is a battle for third place.
Martin Brundle, who didn't even have a drive in Formula One about 5 weeks ago. He was in line for the McLaren job. He got it, drove well, and he was involved in that horrible shunt in Brazil. And now here he is, fighting for the podium in Japan.
And if we're led to believe all the press stories, sometimes fighting for his drive, because remember, Philippe Alliot is also contracted to McLaren, and Ron Dennis apparently has led Alliot to believe that he may also drive this car. So Brundle looks for a good run today to try and hang on to that seat that he's already warmed up now for 2 races.
Through the Moss S's, into the Atwood corner, an uphill right-hander named for Le Mans 24 Hours winner Richard Atwood. There's a look at the running order. Well, once again, Barrichello lights up that right front tire. Now, in the days of the computerized adjustable suspensions, the computer would have pushed that right front wheel down to maintain the right ride height and so forth. Not anymore.
Drivers now have to control the car with their hands and their feet. Traction control was one of the biggest things that saved these tires last year when they went to the narrower tire. Now trying to make these rear tires live is one of the biggest problems they have. But look how impressive the Jordan is with Rubens Barrichello. They probably spend maybe a fifth of what McLaren spend to try and get the same speed that we see at the moment.
Hard braking into the first corner, which is mellifluously named First Corner. There you see the gap from Brundle in 4th. Damon Hill is closing up again from 5th. We should have more traffic after a quick timeout when we return to the Grand Prix of the Pacific, second round of the 1994 Formula One World Championship. We are back at the Grand Prix of the Pacific in Japan, working lap number 26 of 83 scheduled as Martin Brundle comes swerving into the pit lane in the McLaren Peugeot, and Gerhard Berger has the Ferrari in as well.
One of the mechanics wipes the old driver's visor there so he can see where he's going. The V12 screeches away with wheel spin down the pit lane. Look at the speed he enters the corner with, or enters the racetrack with.
And dives right onto the racing line. Gerhard Berger eager to get the Ferrari back in action. The next stop on the Grand Prix World Tour will be the Grand Prix of San Marino from Imola, Italy. One of the homes of the Tifosi, the ravenous Ferrari fans, so hungry for glory after so many down seasons for this team. Operating with a new chassis from English design wizard John Barnard. Seems to be rounding into shape. Now here's Martin Brundle. Just behind him is Jos Verstappen in the Benetton.
So Brundle really having a good run for this McLaren and the Peugeot. Really, he needs the mileage because he hasn't driven a Formula One car over the winter time at all. And he said this weekend was the first time he began to feel as if he was just about to get into the correct rhythm. And Jos Verstappen, good in-car camera work here. Looking behind the McLaren, look at the wings. You can barely see through that cluster and clutter almost of rear wings, trying to generate as much downforce as possible on the back of these cars because the rear tires do not last long enough.
Gerhard Berger re-entered the race in 4th place. Brundle is running in 6th place. There's Christian Fittipaldi in the Arrows just ahead. Or the footwork, I should say. Due to the withdrawal of some of the Footwork Corporation's Japanese sponsorship, the car is still called a Footwork, we are told, but the company is once again Arrows.
One of their backers this year is Financial World. You might remember that magazine. It's also one of the sponsors in NASCAR now, and also one of the sponsors in IndyCar, backing Buddy Lazier's IndyCar program.
This is 5th, 6th, and 7th. The car at the head of the train is Eric Comas in the LaRousse, and he is a lap down.
He is a lap down, but he doesn't seem to be slowing these boys down. He's been about 4 or 5 car lengths ahead of Fittipaldi for the last 2 or 3 laps, and it hasn't changed. So the speed these cars are running at, and remember Brundle is on fresh tyres, yet the speed of all 4 cars here is pretty much stabilized and fairly equal.
Verstappen stumbled a little bit in the Benetton in that corner. Around the final corner and onto the pit straightaway. Up through the gearbox, engines revving to 14,000 or so RPM. 185 miles an hour before they come back down through the box, hard on the brakes.
Martin Brundle had everybody in fits of laughter at the interview after qualifying. They take 6 drivers every weekend for an hour just for a general chit-chat. He was asked, well, what do you think of the Saturday 6? He said, I'd rather have Saturday 6. Everybody enjoyed it.
And Ayrton Senna piped up and said it shouldn't be an hour, it should be a half hour.
And Martin Brundle said, for what?
On board, Christian Fittipaldi's footwork. Looking back at Martin Brundle, you saw that wing shaking once again. Great battle here.
The wing shakes and vibrates. Everything's made of flimsy carbon fiber, just enough to hold the download, barely enough to hold the side forces. Barrichello, he and Damon Hill. Now, this in fact is a battle for second place. Believe it or not, the Jordan Hart V10 combination is currently running in second place, the highest Barrichello has ever run.
Oh, looked like Hill was going to take a run down the inside. Now Barrichello swings wide and Hill sneaks under.
I think that was a mistake. I don't think Barrichello moved over. I think he simply braked too late, didn't quite make the turn in apex, got a little bit too wide, and Damon Hill took full advantage. Look at Barrichello again. That right front smokes as he locks it up under heavy braking for the right-hander.
Barrichello looking for his best finish in Formula One. He has yet to mount the podium. Of course, all thoughts go back to the rainy Donington race of a year ago when he was on the podium until the final 4 laps when he ran out of fuel.
And here's the freight train again, and still Comas is able to stay ahead of these 3 other pursuing cars, Fittipaldi, Brundle, and Jos Verstappen.
I'm guessing, but I think maybe Eric Comas got involved in some of that to and fro at the beginning of the race. He's obviously got a healthy race car, but he's just so far behind, he's not able to make much of a dent in the cars ahead of him. Now here is Barrichello in the pits with the Jordan. Damon Hill went by him. I reckon the team probably decided it would just as well bring him in now.
Clean the radiators. Lovely car, neat design, small, nimble, light, has everything a Formula One car needs. One of the smaller teams, one of the smaller budgets, and they just do an excellent job.
For comparison purposes, the Benetton team has more than 200 members, both at the track, on the research squad, and back at the factory. Eddie Jordan's little operation across the street from the Silverstone racetrack in England, about 60 members.
This is a high-speed freight train here. Christian Fittipaldi, one of the few men in qualifying yesterday on Saturday that actually jumped 6 grid positions. The second qualifying session was very hot, and David Brabham had a major engine blow-up, threw lots of oil all over the racing line. Very few people went slower, except Christian Fittipaldi made up 6 full positions.
You just saw Rubens Barrichello go out the bottom of your picture, so he is back in action. We'll be back with more from the Grand Prix of the Pacific in a moment. Back at the Grand Prix of the Pacific, there's a look at our leaderboard. Rubens Barrichello came into his pit stop in 4th place and got back out on the racetrack in 4th. Now here comes race leader Michael Schumacher. His teammate Jos Verstappen is just ahead of him, and Verstappen moves over to let his team leader through.
Well, that gives you an idea of the pace of Michael Schumacher. Remember, Verstappen is in the same car, the same engine. Maybe not as much talent, we don't know that yet. Certainly not the type of confidence that Schumacher has to... Oh, he gets it sideways. Verstappen gets her sideways under acceleration. Maybe the cars don't handle quite as well, but Schumacher pulls 3 or 4 or 5 car lengths away under that mistake. But you can bet that Verstappen is being extra careful, having brought the last car home very much in kid form.
I would imagine his ears are still ringing after that crash. Egau goes a lap down. That leaves us with 6 cars on the lead lap. Michael Schumacher is setting a tremendous pace, and now he gets onto the back of this 4-car train, perhaps soon to be a 5-car train. I saw another car go out of your picture. Immediately ahead of him is the red and white McLaren of Martin Brundle.
Another man whose ears were ringing after Brazil. A frightening smack to the helmet. And they may even still be ringing as of now, but a frightening smack to the helmet when Verstappen's wheel hit him. Inside with Schumacher.
Let's give a listen to the sound of this Ford V8.
See, Brundle moves aside. Looked like he was in a bit of trouble there, but moves way offline to let Schumacher through.
And Brundle almost fell victim to Verstappen, and that would be a battle for position. Brundle running in 6th place right now. So 5 cars remain on the lead lap. The next man up, Christian Fittipaldi.
And Schumacher just embroiled in this battle here now. Here's the problem for Schumacher. Fittipaldi is embroiled in his own battle for position here. So it's difficult to actually move out of the way and slow down to let the leader through. You have to have a little bit of professional courtesy, but you can't back off too much or else you stand a chance of losing your hard-earned position also.
The car they all passed was the Lotus of Portuguese Pedro Lamy. The new chassis for the Lotus team cannot come a moment too soon. They expect to have it for the next race at Imola, Italy, the Grand Prix of San Marino.
Schumacher doesn't have the power. He took a little look down the inside of Christian Fittipaldi, the Arrows car using the standard off-the-shelf Ford Cosworth that anybody can go and buy and stick in the back of their car. Schumacher, of course, has all the bells and whistles, but he doesn't seem to have a lot more horsepower than the Arrows car. That was the Simtek, backed by MTV of Roland Ratzenberger, that moves aside to let this leading, or this battling quartet of cars through.
There's the Simtek, that purple car right in the middle. Ratzenberger at 31 years of age at his very first Formula One Grand Prix. Running a limited season this year with a team that needs paying drivers to stay afloat. But it is an exciting new entry, the car designed by 27-year-old Nick Wirth, one of the rising stars in the design ranks in Grand Prix racing. Now Martin Brundle pulls up just a little bit on race leader Schumacher. Perhaps he wants to get that lap back.
Well, it looks as if Schumacher is quite happy just to sit here. Don't take any chances. Second place is a long, long way behind. No risks, no funny moves. If the car handles well, you'll make the pass in time. Remember, it's difficult to pass slow cars here, never mind fast cars, because it's so tight.
At the front of the train, you watch one of the Ligers go through the bottom of your picture. I believe that's Eric Bernard. Oh, Schumacher looked down the inside of Fittipaldi again. But I was going to mention that Eric Comas and the LaRousse continues to hold his own in this group.
And he is holding his own. He is not holding up Christian Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi has not made a legitimate passing attempt, not even close enough there. And Schumacher, I would have expected him to be all over the back of Fittipaldi, but he's not. He's happy just to sit there.
Bernard moves aside in the leash. Oh, the race leader had to lock one up there as the cars got 3 wide.
Now it's getting risky. Now it's getting risky. Now we may have to do something here. He shakes his fist, and Brundle is through.
Brundle gets around Fittipaldi, following the race leader, Schumacher. And Verstappen is looking at Fittipaldi seriously now.
Now there's the classic case where you back off, give someone room, and you lose your own position. Schumacher, to make his point, waved his fist and slowed down Fittipaldi, and Brundle pounced and took the position.
So that flurry of activity moves Martin Brundle up into 5th. In 6th place is Christian Fittipaldi, and in 7th place, Jos Verstappen.
One of the problems Brundle is having with his McLaren, which he believes is slowing him down, is he cannot get used to left foot braking. Remember, the McLaren only has 2 pedals in that car. Mika Hakkinen uses his left foot, and Brundle believes that's why he is about half a second quicker. He said, I can't do it on race weekend. To get used to left foot braking, I need to be away in a test session by myself.
Now the battle strings out just a bit. And Eric Comas remains out front in this group with that LaRousse. There is Martin Brundle. The battle begins to close up once again. Grand Prix of the Pacific in Aida, Japan of the Tanaka International Circuit, and Damon Hill brings his Williams Renault into the pits. There you see Damon's record last year in his first full season of Formula One racing with 3 victories following several disappointments, including an engine explosion in his home Grand Prix in Great Britain. Good stop for the Williams team.
Straight back out, almost onto the racing line. Little twitch there from Damon Hill. He lost a complete session on Friday morning when he broke the differential and rolled to a halt very early. And I really think he actually recovered very well for the rest of the weekend, because he was within half a second of Senna in the qualifying grid. In the morning warm-up, he was within a tenth of a second. So I think after his pretty much disastrous weekend in Brazil, although he finished second, he didn't do it with speed. He's actually recovered quite well and gone fast here.
Now there you see the gap from Hill to the red Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. Hill got back out ahead of Berger. He is second, Berger is third, but Berger appears to be closing in. Here's a look at our running order. 42 laps complete. We are at the halfway point. Berger runs in third spot, 55 seconds and change back. Then Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan. Then Martin Brundle and Christian Fittipaldi, each 1 lap down.
We mentioned earlier about the Ferrari being designed by John Barnard, lots of pieces being made in England. In fact, now they're using the British Aerospace wind tunnel for full-scale wind tunnel tests on this new Ferrari. If this car does not win, John Barnard will be very heavily criticized in Italy, because that's the way it happens in Italy. Everybody's hopes rides with this Ferrari, and as this lost streak continues to mount, the pressure mounts on someone like a John Barnard, who's supposed to save face for everybody in Italy, not just everybody at Ferrari.
The last man to win in a Ferrari was Alain Prost back in 1990 in Spain.
And then they fired him. If you can believe that, they fired one of the greatest racing drivers in the world.
Since we are past halfway, let's take a look at our Texaco Haviland race recap. Michael Schumacher, the race leader in that dramatic start that saw Ayrton Senna bumped off the racetrack. He has led all of the race laps thus far. Cars out of the race, Senna, of course, Olivier Beretta, David Brabham. Mika Hakkinen, who is now out of the race. It was he that knocked Senna off the track. And as you look at the rest, in the upper right-hand corner, there is Ukio Katayama in the Tyrrell. It appears he has lost the fire in that Yamaha V10 engine. There's the spot on the racetrack at which he has pulled off, and that will be a big disappointment to this overwhelmingly Japanese crowd. Now here is the battle for sixth. Christian Fittipaldi in the yellow helmet, being followed closely now by Dutchman Jos Verstappen in the Benetton. Up there's Aguri Suzuki in the Jordan. Well off the racetrack, and it looks like he's clouded a truck at the side of the track. It's one of those crawlers that they're using to pull cars out of the gravel pits. There's the dust kicked up by Suzuki's exit, and Fittipaldi heads for the pits. So that will move Verstappen up into the sixth and final points-paying position. Meanwhile, there is his teammate, the race leader, Michael Schumacher. There's Ukio Katayama. Both Japanese drivers in this field are out of the race within a couple of laps of each other.
Katayama very uncomfortable all weekend with tremendous back pain and spasms. Has been seeing a doctor all weekend here. He doesn't need it anymore though, because the physical effort is now over. This
race has belonged totally to Michael Schumacher from the beginning. And given the performance he put on in Brazil 3 weeks ago, at the beginning of the show, we said Michael Schumacher was the coming star. He may be the new dynamo, the juggernaut in Formula One. With 10 points for a victory, if he can hold on, 20 points would put him more than 10 points ahead of anyone else in the field. So the Benettons run in first and fifth position. Schumacher and Verstappen. There is Damon Hill, the lone remaining Williams-Renault in the field. Stay with us for more from Japan. At the Grand Prix of the Pacific, Damon Hill has pulled off the track, running in second place at the time. It appears that he has just lost the fire or perhaps broken the gearbox. There is Frank Williams. He has now lost both of his cars from this race.
No smoke, no steam, so we can only surmise that it's either electrical or transmission. We don't know right now what it is, but Damon Hill, having gone all the way to second place after that earlier incident with Mika Hakkinen when he almost dropped out of the top 10. Schumacher is in.
Michael Schumacher's second pit stop. And you watch the well-drilled Benetton crew go to work. Whoa, he almost stalled it.
The key is to have enough revs when you drop the clutch. If you drop the clutch a fraction before, you get that big hesitation like you just heard there with Schumacher. And if you stall it, then you're in trouble because you lose valuable seconds. It wouldn't mean that much to him right now, but sometimes the engine doesn't fire up properly.
There's Martin Brundle in the McLaren Peugeot trying to close up on the man to the right of your screen, Rubens Barrichello, third and fourth now on the racetrack. The running order behind race leader Schumacher is Gerhard Berger, then these two cars, Barrichello and Brundle.
And this has been a race-long battle between Brundle and Barrichello. They will definitely smile and oh, he hits him. He hit the Simtek car. Roland Ratzenberger was down inside. I can hardly believe that Barrichello turned back down on top of him. Surely he knew he was there.
Ratzenberger was about as far off the line as he could get without going off the racetrack, but Barrichello turned right into him. Now the McLaren closes up on the Jordan under braking.
Well, if he hit him nice and square with the rear wheel, I doubt if he would have done any damage, but that could have taken him out of a points-paying position so easily. That's the Stirling Moss curves, flat in sixth gear that we've just seen them come through. Now you're down at Atwood. It's an uphill run. This is the reasonably open part of the circuit. From here, the end of the braking here, then it gets into the very tight, difficult, twisty section as they pass one of the Lotus cars.
But you notice that the McLaren Peugeot had trouble trying to pull that Lotus with its Mugen Honda engine on the straightaway. He gets him in the corners and carries on, trying to close once again on Barrichello.
This Jordan was 2 seconds a lap faster almost everywhere they tested when they built this new car for this year. Still has the same Hart V10 engine, however it's now lower in the chassis, trying to bring the center of gravity a little bit lower. Back to the anhedral front wing. Brundle is in, but the Jordan is a very fast compact car, and Rubens Barrichello has tremendous confidence in it. But Brundle is in for what he hopes will be his final stop.
Getting into the last 30 laps of this race.
Notice McLaren used the hydraulic jacks. They're actually compressed air that jack the car up. Most teams still use the mechanical device to jack the cars up because McLaren usually have something special or something different.
There is Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. Berger running in second spot.
And if he can hang on to that, it will be a good first 2 races for this new Ferrari. Alesi having although it was a distant third place in Brazil, I think it is 2 good results. Alesi currently at home nursing those broken vertebrae. There's something funny about that Alesi accident. Ferrari were very quiet about it. They have made some statements that he is seeing a doctor, but the news seems to come out in dribs and drabs, and usually that means the driver's a little bit more serious. He did have partial paralysis after the accident. Now we're back on board with Gerhard Berger. This is the camera mounted on the rear wing. Listen how smooth that V12 is. That was a second gear blast. All second gear.
Pierluigi Martini in the Minardi just ahead of him, but he is a lap down. Berger getting a little bit of slipping in that corner.
And that wheel spin that you heard is the problem that they are experiencing now, particularly with the traction control having been banned. That little bit of wheel spin puts the strain on the rear tires. They wear them out, which means they slip and spin even more, so you exaggerate the problem. That is one of the biggest things they've had to cope with this weekend here at TI.
Well, count the camera pods on that Ferrari, at least 3, 2 of them on the rear wing. Now there's Verstappen into the pits for his second and we presume final pit stop of the day. Notice they use the standard man-powered jack. Whoops, lost the air gun to the right front corner. I hope they got that wheel on snugly.
I was just about to say, see how quickly those wheels come on and off, and then the gun did get stuck. But Verstappen, a nice clean stop.
Comes out of the track just ahead. Oh, and he goes around. He came out just ahead of the Sauber. I believe that was Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
Keep the engine running. It is running. He's got wheel spin, but he's high-sided in the gravel track.
Flavio Briatore on the left, the team director. Look at the Ferrari mechanics.
They love
it.
Oh. They weren't even in contention for position because Verstappen was so far behind, and the Ferrari guys love to see the Benetton in trouble. Well, he's elected to jump out.
Corner workers are there. You see the crane just beyond the pits. Now let's take a look at what happened. You'll notice the Sauber bearing down on him, trying to get up to speed just a bit too quickly, perhaps.
And he loses it very early, right on the turn in. The back end begins to come around. He's on the brakes and just does a lazy flip over the curb and buries himself in the sand trap. Sand traps are made to stop the car. Exactly what they did. And old Flavio's not that impressed. 2 races, 2 non-finishes, and JJ Leto may be back in that car for Imola. Leto has been testing, but his biggest problem is not the side-to-side forces on his neck. It's under braking and acceleration. He cannot control his neck and hold his head up properly.
Leto, the young Finn, who of course had a big testing crash of his own just after he signed his Benetton contract. Berger in the Ferrari not making much headway in trying to overtake Pierluigi Martini in that Minardi. Now he brings the car in. Well, that may explain it. Berger was not at quite full speed, knowing he was pitting on this lap.
You see dust and dirt fly out from under that car as he accelerates down the pit lane. Again, the mechanical jacks. Look at the front wheels. Look, off, on in a flash. Cleans the visor, fills it with fuel.
Pegs that V12 engine and launches back out onto the racetrack. Berger is back on the racetrack, but he is in danger of losing a position. We'll take a quick timeout and return for more of the Grand Prix of the Pacific. Stay with us. Grand Prix of the Pacific, Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, glad to have you with us. There goes the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger, and there is race leader Michael Schumacher. Now here comes Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the black Sauber Mercedes, and just behind him, Rubens Barrichello in the Jordan Hart.
Barrichello just having a stellar day. Reliability of the new Hart V10 engine was in question, but it is strong and it gets better.
Now with Gerhard Berger's pit stop, Barrichello is up into second spot.
So the chase is on there. Wendlinger undercharged, 2 V10s here. The Ilmore and the Hart in the Jordan. And he gets down the inside, under braking, unchallenged by Wendlinger, who gives him all the room he needs. Here's Berger, and then race leader Schumacher. So almost like Brazil, Schumacher has virtually lapped the whole field here.
Now Gerhard Berger, just having stopped, will be on fresh tires. We'll see if he can make any headway and try to run down Barrichello. Meanwhile, he's got the race leader in his mirrors, although I suppose, Derek, that's really not a concern of his at this point.
No, it's not. And it's not really a concern of Schumacher's because he is so far ahead, almost a full lap ahead, he can just take it easy. But taking it easy can sometimes be when you lose concentration, so you have to stay pretty close to the edge, but he is in so much control. You know, the Benetton, the light, nimble package must have all these designers scratching their heads a little bit here, because here you look at the Ferrari, the V12, a big, heavy engine that needs a bigger and heavier fuel load. Jean Todt there, the new team manager, trying to turn this Ferrari team around back into race winners. But if you think in a heavy, bigger engine, a heavy, bigger fuel load, which is harder on brakes and tires, then you go back to the Benetton, a lighter, smaller V8, a lighter, smaller fuel load, a nice nimble car that's easy on tires and brakes. That is the combination that is beginning to show a bit of dominance here. And then add that to the era of Schumacher, and you have something that so far looks unbeatable in the first 2 races.
Some of the skeptics in the pit lane was wondering whether or not some of the manufacturers would take another look at a V8 engine form. The Renault people, whose V10 has dominated the series for the last 2 seasons, say they were already working on their 1994 engine when the whole refueling matter came up, and they had to totally switch their design sense from reliability to outright horsepower, knowing that it was a very different kind of Formula One that would come to be in 1994.
And you say outright horsepower because it is 3 separate races now, 3 short sprint races that tend to favor the brave, fast man like a Michael Schumacher.
It affected the fuel companies as well when refueling came back. They no longer needed to concern themselves with fuel economy. They could go for horsepower as well, knowing they could tank up as much as they needed to. There goes Barrichello in the Jordan, then Wendlinger in the Sauber, and here comes Berger.
This is a race for position here. There's only 5 seconds between second and third, both podium positions. But Berger, I believe, has had one more stop than Barrichello. Yes, he has. He's had one more stop than Rubens Barrichello. Take a good close look at the side pods of the Ferrari here. Right behind the entrance to the side pods, John Bernhardt has put in a duct to take the air away to try and help the radiators cool and try and improve the airflow under this car to try and desperately increase the downforce. Increasing the downforce is what Alesi was working on at Mugello in Italy with a new front wing when something went wrong and he had that heavy crash. Rumors indicate it was the front wing was too powerful. Other suggestions came from Italy that said it was actually the front suspension that broke. Remember, they have the novel, solidly mounted front suspension that's movement comes from actual flexing of the metal in the wings, and Berger tries to slide down the inside of Wendlinger. Now he gets by down the inside. Look at the steering wheel on Berger's car. It's just got the 2 hand pieces and no continuation, no top section. Obviously Berger doesn't need it. He never gets his hands crossed up. Nowadays, in terms of the automatic gearbox, you never have to take your hands out of that fixed position.
Considering the short distance of the steering arc on these cars, no, they never do move their hands. There you see 21 laps to go in this race as Berger launches himself onto the front straightaway again. And look who comes into the picture from behind, the race leader, Michael Schumacher, picking his way around. What do you guess, Derek? Is he in defensive mode now? Oh, Barrichello's back in. This is his second stop.
Look at those rear wings. 1, 2, 3. Oh, he's in trouble. He stalled the engine. He's on fire. No, it fires again. He stalled the engine. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rear wing planes on that car. 8 rear wings.
Call it a wall.
That's one of the things they're talking about doing for next year, reducing the overall downforce on these cars.
Michael Schumacher remains the dominant leader and will be back to Japan. Back at the Grand Prix of the Pacific, second round of 16 in the 1994 Formula One World Driving Championship. There's the McLaren Peugeot of Martin Brundle running in third place behind Michael Schumacher and Gerhard Berger. We've certainly had some interesting leaderboards in the first couple of races of this 1994 season. Ayrton Senna, the overwhelming preseason favorite, out of the race at the very first corner here in Japan. And it has been dominated by Michael Schumacher, but we've seen a lot of action behind the race leader. Speaking of the devil, there he is.
There he is there. So you still have good battles going on here. Berger is trying to catch No, he has Barrichello, because Barrichello made that stop, but now the battle is behind him. Martin Brundle, you saw him at the top of the picture there, is closing in on Gerhard Berger.
Meanwhile, up front, Michael Schumacher plows along in only his third full season of Formula One. Berger going around Roland Ratzenberger as Schumacher closes up. In that short time, from making about $100,000 a year in just 2 years, Schumacher has launched himself up into, I suppose the $10 million range. He now has all of the accoutrement, the Ferrari F40, the apartment in Monaco, the toast of the sport.
And what he has plenty of is experience in go-karts. And he can use experience like that to great effect, because this is very tight stop, go, left, right, duck and dart and dive. It's exactly the way you did in karts. Oh, Alboreto is in trouble. He's off the racetrack.
Now, I believe that's Pierluigi Martini.
Oh, it's Martini.
Climbing out of that Minardi Ford. The paint job looks very much like the Jordans.
This is the merger of 2 different teams in that Minardi to produce that car. But Schumacher just happy and content to stay that nice distance behind Berger. Doesn't need to catch him. It'll be interesting to see now what Brundle is going to do when he catches up with Schumacher.
Schumacher's lap times have dropped just a little bit. Give him credit. He is learning quickly. Remember, it was just a season or so ago when he made the same aggressive mistake twice at Manicourt, France, in the French Grand Prix. In one instance, knocking Senna out of the race, and they had heated words in the pit lane afterwards. Senna called him immature, said he had much to learn about Formula One, when to move, and how to run your race. Well, obviously, Michael Schumacher has learned a lot since then. There is Pierluigi Martini making the long walk back to the pits. Tough to get this far on a warm day such as we have here in Aida, Japan. Get all the way this close to the end of the race and then drop out with nothing to show for it.
One of the advantages the Benetton team had is this was the first of the 94 cars that was ready and on the racetrack for pre-season testing way earlier than anybody else. And Williams, in fact, now credits their lack of testing time for their lack of performance. They said, look at Benetton, first car on the racetrack, testing miles, makes you go fast, and now they're proving their point.
No question about it. The Benetton team well-funded and well-organized, and it hasn't always been that way. This is a team that once ran 5 different engines in as many seasons, and they were second only to Ferrari in team intrigue. Riding now with Schumacher.
Look at his steering wheel. Another unusual combination.
Kind of an oval wheel. You see it flattened on the bottom to give him maximum room for his knees in the cockpit.
And then flattened across the top also. It's got that familiar Ford V8. Just listen.
There's Rubens Barrichello.
So close last year at Donington to that podium position. Eddie Jordan was almost in tears when it appeared he ran out of fuel with 4 or 5 laps to go in a secure position on the podium.
And then later on in France, the last race of the first half of the season, when Michael Andretti got by Barrichello for that points-paying position, that meant that Eddie Jordan was out of about $2 million in travel money. Then you saw Eddie Jordan in tears. Schumacher with Martin Brundle just behind. There you see the gap from the second-place car of Berger back to the third-place McLaren of Brundle. About 3.5 seconds, and they've got the race leader in between them.
So in the last 4 laps, Brundle has pulled about 0.5 second a lap up onto Gerhard Berger. So he is closing. You see him right there going out of the picture as we go back to Christian Fittipaldi. Another one having a tremendous run here, all the way up to 5th place after all the pit stops. The Arrows car, of course, this year. Remember last year they ran the McLaren active suspension and suddenly jumped in performance. Well, this year they're back to the light, nimble car concept of Benetton with the Ford V8 engine. And this year the gearbox they use is the new X-Track gearbox, which is a unit being produced by Mike Endine in England. So the X-Track gearbox now, a kit car gearbox or a customer gearbox available off the shelf. The Lotus again moves over. Terrible weekend for the Lotus cars. And Brundle is in. And he's slow.
And he's slow, very slow.
Brundle is in trouble. He's slow.
And he's taking the belts off. Oh, he'll park the car.
Brundle, what a great run for Martin Brundle, and it's all over. He will be absolutely livid, disappointed. Oh, just look at his head. He's not talking on the radio.
Well, it's been Martin Brundle's career path. He has just not been able to buy a break in Formula One. So many disappointments. And think of the way his season has gotten underway. First of all, he shared the cockpit of that McLaren with Jos Verstappen briefly in Brazil. And now he is out of the race when a points-paying position was right there to be had. So with him out, that will move Barrichello up into 3rd place. Back on the podium, Christian Fittipaldi will move into 4th. 5th place will go to his teammate Gianni Morbidelli. And you can see the disappointment in Martin Brundle's face. Tough break. We'll be right back. Back in Japan at the Grand Prix of the Pacific, and Gianni Morbidelli has a big problem in the back of his Minardi.
And he missed the entrance to the pit lane, so he's going to have to go all the way around, but lots and lots of smoke. Big-time smoke now coming out.
And big-time oil spewing out the back of that car all over the racetrack. Morbidelli staying right on the racing line with the Lotus just ahead of him.
I don't think he even knows. Oh, he knows it now. He knows it now. Oil eventually spewed out the last dregs that were left in it onto the rear wheel. And now he is buried in the sand trap.
Well, tough break for Gianni Morbidelli, but I'm sure the rest of the drivers on the racetrack, if you took a vote, would say, thank goodness he's off and he's not dripping oil all the way around. Here's another look.
Under braking, you see the oil. See it on the racetrack? He dumps it out. Finally, all over the rear wheels, smoke, oil, everything. It's the end of the day.
Really?
Look at the tractor they use to pull these out. They're like small tank track units that actually go through the sand quite easily, maneuver, able to yank those cars out of there rather than have to use cranes all the time.
There is race leader Michael Schumacher still running behind the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. That is the 2nd place car. So Schumacher, as you mentioned earlier, Derek, for the 2nd straight race has lapped the field.
Everybody except Gerhard Berger, and he's virtually lapped him because that's him just 3 or 4 car lengths ahead of him.
Turning up through the Hobbs corner. I wonder what Greg and Guy Hobbs did to deserve a corner named after him. I'll have to ask her father next time I see him.
And if they hit it away in Japan, it must be, is it good or bad? Oh, look at this!
Oh, Alboreto backwards off the racetrack, and it looks like Wendlinger and the Sauber involved as well.
Well, Alboreto, look at this. Now he said it's over, it's over. Switch it off.
That was a look at Eddie Jordan looking on.
The color schemes are so alike, maybe Eddie thinks it's his car, but there goes his boy Rubens. So Eddie has a sigh of relief as his podium position is still intact, but Alboreto, who's running in 8th place, collides somehow with Wendlinger, and he's buried, and it's over.
You see damage to the left side pod of the Sauber Mercedes of Carl Wendlinger. Here's another look.
So this is the acceleration run, 2nd to 3rd. Alboreto obviously tried to come down the inside, under braking. Look at the rear wing. Oh, up and over.
Oh.
Collides wheel to wheel. Alboreto could have gone upside down there.
Notice the wing shake on the rear of Alboreto's Minardi. And that was Rubens Barrichello just behind them, so Eddie Jordan had good reason to have his heart skip a beat. One of the tight 50-mile-an-hour hairpins. There is the Sauber pits. Just to the right with the long hair, Carmen Ziegler, the only female team manager in Formula One. One car out, but Heinz-Harald Frentzen remains in the race for the Sauber team. As Michael Schumacher crosses the start-finish line, we're into the last dozen or so laps of this race.
Ross Brawn is the man who is credited with coming up with the major design changes on this Benetton car, and Frentzen, with 10 laps to go, is having by far and away his best Grand Prix. Bit of a Cinderella story, because I know you know a bit of it. Last year, sat at home with nothing to do and got a chance call, and it has turned into a Grand Prix drive. And even Schumacher says he is potentially as quick as Schumacher, if not even better. Remember, he doesn't have near the confidence or the experience of a Schumacher, but he was spectacular in testing as soon as he jumped into this Sauber.
In fact, he turned one of the quickest testing laps of the winter, which of course doesn't mean much. You don't know what is being done to the car during winter testing, whether it was at the minimum weight and so forth. But Heinz-Harald Frentzen shared the dominating Mercedes sports car program with Carl Wendlinger and with Michael Schumacher. And as you say, Derek, many thought that he was the quickest of what they called the German junior team.
The main backing for this car comes from Broker. You ask, what is Broker? Well, it's a magazine covering world stock and money markets. So Financial World and Broker, two large world magazines on money management, involved in the major platform of Formula One advertising. Very distinctive sound off that V10. It has an unusual pitch to it. You can hear it quite clearly. The Renault V10, the Hart V10, all sound similar, totally different to the V8 and of course to the V12.
There goes Christian Fittipaldi in the footwork. I've seen groups of fans standing outside of racetracks, places like Monza, outside the wall, which is about 12 or 14 feet high, listening to the cars go by inside and picking them out by their engine note.
Normally aspirated Formula One cars, for those of you who like it, it is a glorious sound. Another look at one of the Mile 7 banners. Mile 7, of course, is a cigarette. When they go to countries where you're not allowed to have cigarette advertising on the cars, they will simply turn the M upside down, and it'll be Wild 7. Will anybody even notice?
Here's a look at our running order. Michael Schumacher with 74 laps of 83 scheduled in the books. Gerhard Berger looking pretty comfortable in second spot. Still the only unlapped car on the racetrack. Rubens Barrichello, Christian Fittipaldi, Heinz-Harald Frentzen in fifth spot now. Eric Comas and the LaRousse up into sixth. Another interesting leaderboard. I mentioned that Comas had a problem early in the race, but since then, that LaRousse Ford V8 machine has run very well.
So the Ferrari still showing good reliability. The gearbox is a little bit suspect in this car. One of the mechanical changes they made after Brazil, trying to get the rigidity better in this car, they enclosed the complete shock absorber mounting on the chassis, trying to make it stronger to try and transfer the loads into the chassis and make it so as the driver could feel things a little bit better.
Rubens Barrichello holding on to that podium finish as we get into the closing laps of this. Riding on board with race leader Michael Schumacher in the closing laps of the Grand Prix of the Pacific. Bob Varshan, Derek Daly with you for round 2 of 16 in the 1994 Formula One World Driving Championship. And I think you can tell that Michael Schumacher is really easing off at this point.
And most times, that's Comas ahead of him in the other Cronenberg car, the LaRousse car. He is about to lap him. I'm sure he'll pull out and get it done here. Yes, he does. Comas moves aside. But it's amazing. The races that you win are very often the easiest of all. I would almost bet that Brazil and this event here are much easier races for Schumacher than some of the ones that he's had to scrimp and fight for every lap. That's just the way it goes when the package is correct. The job on race day becomes a little bit easier for the driver.
Looking at the back of the garage area, at the front straightaway and the grandstands beyond. Michael Schumacher puts Eric Comas 3 laps down, but Comas is still in a points-paying position. He is 6th. Behind Schumacher, Berger, Barrichello, Fittipaldi, and Frentzen.
Never has trouble with fitness. Works out so hard, so long, so much. Says the tougher the race, the better he likes it. He thinks he has an advantage over other people. And all that does is makes other people tired. The Jordan boys take a little nap because they think in the next 2 laps, their boy, currently in 3rd place, is certainly not going to make a quick stop. So they can relax a little bit.
26 cars began the race. 11 are still out there, and only 2 on the lead lap, Michael Schumacher and Gerhard Berger. But all in all, it's been an action-packed race. There you see Schumacher's curriculum vitae with 3 career Grand Prix victories and a possible 4th coming here today.
And only 40 Grand Prix starts, and we could be looking at a realistic possibility of Michael Schumacher being a legitimate challenger to win the World Championship. Everybody, just about everybody with any slight, skimpy knowledge of Formula One said it's a foregone conclusion this year that Ayrton Senna in the Williams would clean up everything and win every race. And suddenly it's hard to believe no points, and Schumacher looking towards 2 wins in the first 2 races.
Hard to believe, too, that the Williams team that has been absolutely bulletproof in winning the manufacturers or teams title in the last couple of seasons, with 2 cars in the first 2 races, has recorded a grand total of 1 finish.
We said it in the opening, racing has a habit of going in cycles. Maybe there is a bit of a trough on the way for Williams that they have to ride out, and maybe Benetton has hit the rhythm at the right time with a young, brave, talented, and now increasingly more experienced driver, and it's difficult to beat this package at the moment.
2 laps remain.
And still behind Berger, happy enough just to sit there. He doesn't need to make a challenge, way ahead. Just sit there, mind yourself, no problems in traffic, and just stroke her home.
Not to impute motives to Gerhard Berger either, but you don't want to give the 2nd place guy a shot at you trying to pass him in the closing laps of a race either.
Oh, Gerhard would never hit anybody trying to make a pass.
There you see Berger, the object of attention in Michael Schumacher's pit.
Stewart will be one of the most famous pit men, or pit board men of all, because we saw him in Brazil hand the sign out to Schumacher. Now we see him again put the sign out. He'd be a very familiar face.
As long as Michael Schumacher holds it together, he will have his 2nd victory of the season, 2nd victory in as many races, the first back-to-back victories in his still young Formula One career, and he will take an enormous lead in the 1994 World Championship. A full 20 points while no one else, by my unofficial reckoning at this point, will have even 10. So Michael Schumacher making a very strong early statement for this championship. Just a few corners remaining now. Many people said this track was too narrow and too remote to put on a good Formula One Grand Prix, but I think they've been proven wrong. It's been a great show here today, although some of the people in this crowd of nearly 60,000 will be a long time before they see home, even if they live in one of the nearby Japanese cities. P1, place number 1 for the shoe. Michael Schumacher off the final corner, comes down to the checkered flag to claim his 4th career Formula One victory. And if you've been with us over the last couple of seasons, you know that he is one of the most enthusiastic podium visitors you will ever see. So we can expect more out of Michael today. Flavio Briatore embracing one of his crewmen. The Benetton team is the new dynamo in Formula One.
The dawning and confirmation of the Schumacher era. Just great to see him take the victory, and great to see that arm out of the cockpit in sheer joy and happiness at a job well done. All the boys can congratulate each other. What a team effort from Benetton. What a team growth. Lots of money spent on this team, but they have slowly progressed up and up. And there used to be only 3 big teams in F1, Ferrari, McLaren and Williams. Very definitely there are now 4, the big 4.
Michael Schumacher makes his way around his victory lap. He'll pull into the Parc Fermé. There you see the Sauber of Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who will finish in 5th place. There's Gerhard Berger, the 2nd place car, coming down to the checkered flag. And he too waves his arm in the air. It's been a while since Gerhard Berger has had a good finish, so I'm sure he will savor this one.
And the look of the Irish holds out for Eddie Jordan. He's got Discover Ireland on the side of that car, sponsored by the Irish government. And Larini gets a hug and a kiss from Jean Todt, although he didn't get very far. He will drive an Imola because Alesi will not be fit. The bones that are broken, the vertebrae that are broken will not be ready. Schumacher continues to wave. Berger 2nd, and there he is. Discover Ireland, Discover Barrichello, telling everybody I was 3rd. Oh, Eddie Jordan will have a couple of pints of Guinness tonight.
For Rubens Barrichello, who had that 3rd place way back at the Grand Prix of Europe in 1993 at rainy Donington Park and had it snatched away so cruelly at the end, finally gets his first podium. It should be a good one with Barrichello, Berger, and Schumacher up there. Come back and enjoy it with us. And in the middle of your screen, Eddie Jordan reacts to the performance of his man, Rubens Barrichello, who takes his first Formula One podium as we watch Michael Schumacher mount the very top step. Derek Daly, your thoughts?
Well, the rule changes definitely seem to have benefited Benetton and accelerated a welcome changing of the guard. It's now nice to see youth and smiles decorate the podium for a change where winning seems to be fun once again.
Michael Schumacher, 2 races, 2 victories in 1994. It's been a spectacular day, and all in all, a great Grand Prix of the Pacific here at this unique and new Formula One circuit, Tanaka International. Here's a look at our overall final results in this race. Michael Schumacher brings it home for Benetton over the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger, Rubens Barrichello, Christian Fittipaldi, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and Eric Comas. After a weekend fraught with despair, Johnny Herbert and Pedro Lamy brought home the Lotus cars in 7th and 8th positions. As you take a look through the rest of the results, you'll find the names of some of the drivers who had that awful shock right at the very first corner of this race as 3-time defending world champion Ayrton Senna was taken off the racetrack. Here's a look at the drivers' points following 2 races. Schumacher with a full 20 points, Barrichello in a very surprising 2nd place. In the Constructors' Championship, a full 20 points will go to the Benetton team as they take a lead over Ferrari, Jordan Hart, and the 2-time defending champions from Williams-Renault. Let's hear from our winner.
I wouldn't believe at all if anybody would tell me this before the season. The race went on I mean, after the start, very well. I did have no trouble with the car. That was fantastic. I wasn't pushed very hard from anybody at this time, so I could take it very easy with the tyres, with the car, and could run the race home. That's the only intention I had after the start. But the good point is that we improved our starts, because in Brazil they weren't too good, and we worked on all the areas where we were missing something. And this is a fantastic team effort, and they have done a brilliant job.
No question about it. Checkered flag coverage of the Grand Prix of the Pacific will be coming your way Monday, April 25th at 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 10:30 p.m. Pacific. And our next stop on the 16-race Formula One World Tour will be the Grand Prix of San Marino from Imola, Italy, Sunday, May 1st, 7:50 a.m. Eastern Time, 4:50 a.m. Pacific. You couldn't ask for a more dramatic start to this first-time event than the one we had, as three-time world champion Ayrton Senna was punted from the back by Mika Hakkinen and then T-boned by the Ferrari of Nicola Larini. A bad weekend for them, but a great one for Michael Schumacher, and we thank you for joining us. I'm Bob Varsha for Derek Daly. So long from the Tanaka International Circuit in Aida, Japan.